that movie was 1944.
Oh, that late? Wow. I gotta watch that. That must have been an amazing morale boost.
Oh yeah,
You know
to
that?
be able to bomb Tokyo.
Do you know about that, Shank? You know Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
That got the U.S. into war. And of course the United States was totally unprepared. But, you know, Roosevelt, the administration, etc., figured we got to do something dramatic here. Otherwise Americans are going to be too depressed to like even fight this war. So they put together a raid on Tokyo. They got B-29s and put them on an aircraft carrier.
Which wasn't designed to.
Wasn't designed for that. So this guy, Colonel Jimmy Doolittle, was in command of this thing. So they flew. They couldn't get back. They would have to keep going and crash land in China or do whatever they could. So they flew. They were about maybe a couple hundred miles from Japan.
Yeah.
And they took off from the deck of this thing, and a lot of them weren't able to take off, but they took off from the deck of this aircraft carrier, and they're struggling to get up into the air and all that.
Yeah, because they were so overloaded
Just
with fuel.
with bombs and everything.
Bombs and fuel.
And they bombed Tokyo. I mean, it was just sort of a token bombing, but they bombed Tokyo, and of course, you know, Americans went nuts.
Yeah,
we're gonna win.
We nuked us.
But there's a movie, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, that is about this.
2 weeks apart, Nagasaki.
Did he make it back?
Oh, 3 days. The 6th and the 9th.
Some of them got captured.
Some of them got captured. Yeah, some crashed in Japan, some crashed in China.
Some were shot down over Japan.
Yeah, I mean, it was high risk.
The ones that crashed in China, did they end up
Yeah,
I guess
China was an ally.
Yeah, China was an ally then. Yeah. Imagine crashing in Japan. That would not have been good.
No. See, the reason China doesn't have an air force is because all their airplanes are made of lead. Just fall out of
Well,
the
they don't
sky.
have much of an air. They've got one aircraft carrier,
Yeah, they got one.
which looks ridiculous.
Yeah, one of the British style.
Look at this thing. That's big around here. See that boat on that truck?
Oh, yeah.
That's like a high school sport here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's where the plane hit, right here. So it comes flying right down. It dips down, as you can see. Look at the landscape there.
Yeah.
And bam, right here.
That's
So
where
all that white replacement stone was destroyed. Everything behind it. And this is all Afghanistan, Iraq graves here of combat dead in those places. There's some cherry trees. See, those are wild. Those are wild cherry trees. Now, there are some things that have been pulled off, like Yuri Gagarin, you know, that, I mean, in the air, that have taken major amounts of courage, like the Colonel Doolittle thing.
Yeah.
That's another
Mercury
one.
missions.
Oh my God! But imagine there being Gagarin, the first guy to do it.
Yeah.
No one had done it.
Doing what?
Fly around, you know,
Well, he was
orbiting the
first in
Earth.
Space.
I'll tell you another thing. John Glenn was just buried here the other day.
Yeah.
Big flyover and everything. I mean, just major full military honors.
Oh, very cool.
At 77, he gets shot into space.
Yeah. Wasn't that awesome?
Amazing. I mean, this guy,
Senator.
talk about the right stuff.
Yeah, he flew a shuttle mission. Yeah. Yeah. So, hon, we're going to the Lincoln Memorial
We're going to
next.
Lincoln. Yeah, we're going to
That'll
Lincoln.
take a little while. And
No,
we've got
not
about
really.
40
You know,
minutes.
like, it'll take about a half an hour or so, and then we're going to have to get you back to your
Yeah.
place.
So this will be our last thing.
This will be the last stop. This was fun. So we're going back across the Potomac. This is Memorial Bridge, which nothing bigger than this can be on this right now. So there's the Kennedy Center, and then behind it is the Watergate. There's the State Department over there, that long building.
You know, you've seen one State Department.
Yeah, I mean, really. Don't get too excited. And there's Georgetown University that we saw, and there's the Russian embassy up on the horizon over that television tower.
Oh, yeah.
So the Lincoln Memorial is almost 100 years old. It was dedicated in 1922.
We saw a tour
5 years away.
on Nat Geo about everything that's underground that you don't see, the whole structure.
Here.
Yeah, here.
Well, because, you know, this was all swampland.
Yeah.
And they had to build the Jefferson, on 60-foot pilings and stuff like
Right.
that, driven down to the muck underneath here.
I guess.
And we're going to meet Sheikh across the street there. up at Lincoln. I'll tell you, if you want to read an interesting book about the Lincoln assassination, American Brutus by Michael Kaufman. It's like parallel biographies of Lincoln and John Wilkes Booth that merge. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. And, you know, just beautiful research, beautifully written. But it's amazing how much Maryland, the state of Maryland, figures into this. As I explained, remember we were talking earlier, like half of Maryland was a slave state, half was a free state. And when Lincoln was elected in November of 1860, a month later, South Carolina drops out of the United States. I mean, talk about dysfunctional and a crisis and all of that kind of stuff. Nothing going on right now could even compare. So by the time Lincoln is inaugurated, Inauguration Day was on March 4th. Until 1937. So Lincoln gets inaugurated on March 4th, 1861. Meanwhile, 4 other states have dropped out. So the United States is falling apart. A month after he's inaugurated, a month after he becomes president, Fort Sumter happens. There's a military base on an island, essentially, a little island in Charleston Harbor. This is where it really gets interesting. Lincoln, realizing that the senators from the southern slave counties in Maryland have all the political power, they're going to vote to secede. And if that happens, I mean, the South had to deliver a knockout punch early in the war to win it. You know, they didn't have the manpower, they didn't have the resources. And this would have been the knockout punch. So Lincoln arrests 35 members of the Maryland State Senate and puts them in prison, and suspends the First Amendment in Maryland, puts these Baltimore and a couple of other cities under martial law, and suspends habeas corpus, meaning you can toss people in jail with no explanation and keep them there as long as you want. And Maryland, the kind of, yeah. And he puts the legislators in Fort McHenry, where Francis Scott, you know, where the Battle of Fort McHenry was going on, when Francis Scott Key was inspired to write the lyrics to the Star Spangled Banner. But in the election of 1860, Lincoln was not on the ballot of any of the southern states. They don't talk about, I'm sure they don't talk about this in school, but he was on the ballot in the 5 border states, Maryland, Delaware, Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky, and he didn't win any of those states. To show you how different 2 neighboring states can be, Lincoln won Pennsylvania in 1860 with 56% of the vote, and Maryland got 2% of the vote. So Marylanders already didn't like him, and when he did all this stuff, they hated him. Of course, it was all unconstitutional, but it wasn't decided to be unconstitutional for like 2 years. And you could say, you know, that Lincoln saved the country by doing this. But he set the stage for his murder because of the way he treated Maryland. And John Wilkes Booth was from Maryland, but in Booth's plot, 7 of the 9 conspirators, including Booth, were from Maryland. And there were other plots to kill Lincoln, but the one that was successful was made up almost entirely of Marylanders. And but just an amazing story.
I didn't think of that.
Well, you know.
You know, you might learn some of it in school, but who remembers that?
Well, you know, the winners write history, the losers write resumes, you know.
Yeah.
You don't get it. There's an Abraham Lincoln, well, there's somebody, you know, nobody knows. I mean, every president, every politician, in a way, that becomes famous, there's another person there that no one knows or ever hears about. But the history of this area, and southern Maryland, all during the war, was full of smugglers and thieves and spies and everything. It was full of U.S. troops were there looking for conspirators involved in all kinds of plots to burn down the Capitol and, you know, kill Lincoln and everything. And that's where Booth went. Booth was like Brad Pitt. He was as popular as Brad Pitt. His brother was like Richard Burton.
Oh, seriously?
They were from the foremost acting family in America. And his brother was the foremost Shakespearean actor in the English-speaking world. He performed in Australia, Great Britain, everywhere. And but there were 3 brothers. Junius Jr., his father's name was Junius Booth, and Junius Jr. and Edwin Booth. The Booth Theater on Broadway is named after Edwin Booth, Booth's brother. And John Wilkes Booth. When these 3 guys performed in Julius Caesar on Broadway, I mean, the lines were around the block. You couldn't get tickets. There's a huge statue of Edwin Booth in Central Park. I mean, this guy was like the biggest actor of his day. And of course, when his brother did this, I mean, it wasn't a great career boost for Edwin. And he just stopped performing. But it's an amazing, amazing book, though, American Brutus. And Booth kept a diary as he was escaping. It was a 12-day escape. And he starts out, he's like the Count of Monte Cristo when he starts this diary. And he gets more and more, he gets crazier and crazier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's real interesting.
Yeah, he's like harbored in a farmhouse.
Yeah, well, that's where he was killed, yeah. They got almost, well, his idea was to go to Mexico.
Oh,
And
really?
with no idea of how to get there or anything. And they couldn't even get across the Potomac River. I mean, nobody, he figured he'd be a hero. And no one wanted to be associated with him. Get out of here, man. We don't want you around here. Because there was a manhunt going on. And, but it took them 5 days to get across the Potomac River into Virginia. And they you know, couldn't find a boat, couldn't find a guy who would do it. They tried it on their own, and they started going south on the river. They couldn't get to the other side. The current was too strong. And they finally found a guy who would take them across. And then they get as far as a farm north of Richmond. And meanwhile, soldiers are like on their trail. And the barn, the tobacco barn where they're hiding is set on fire. And Booth is with another guy, David Harold. And Harold surrenders when the fire starts. And Booth is in there quoting Shakespeare and stuff like that. And Sergeant Boston Corbett shoots him in the neck and paralyzes him. They drag him out, and he dies a couple of hours later. But his last words were, "Tell Mother I did it for the country." He had the letters between him and his mother sold flowers outside of a theater, and his father who was married at the time, falls madly in love with the woman who became Booth's mother in London outside of a theater. And Booth had no idea that his father had been previously married, had a kid. But he really, the letters between Booth and his mother are just incredibly touching. But he was nuts, too. Anyway, well, that was fun.
Well, thank you for all
That was a
this
great day with you guys.
That was a lot of fun.
We saw everything.
See how much you can do?